The preparatory question to this conference asks submissions to explore whether experiential research and scientific experimentation meet each other and transform the way we learn about and understand the world. This prompt, drawing on critiques that science is not experiential, is geared towards responses that show how research transforms the way we learn about and understand the world. While not wishing to devalue attempts to participate in this ethic, I analyze scientific experimentation staunchly situated in an alternative ethic, that which continually supports the torture of non-humans. It validates this positioning on the grounds that 1, research created by any other means would be scientifically, financially, or otherwise unsupportable, and 2, continued research is necessary to increase the humaneness of the experiments. This is not to say that all scientific work is homogeneous, or that scientific research in general is not a useful way of understanding the world, but to encourage uncomfortable communication between researchers and non-researchers on the ethics behind scientific experimentation on non-human animals. I will first address how, despite the ethic that the Canadian Council on Animal Care holds, which is to reduce, replace, refine experimentation on non-human animals, all institutions nationwide under the CCAC, which includes the University of British Columbia and its Okanagan campus, have on average increased both the number of non-human animals involved in experiments and the severity of these experiments. This is illustrated by the fact that all CCAC institutions on average, and the University of British Columbia specifically, have shown no sustained downward trend in the proportion of experiments in Category E, where Category E are procedures which cause severe pain near, at, or above the pain tolerance threshold of unanesthetized conscious animals. For reference, the pain tolerance is the maximum amount of pain a being is able to tolerate. Consider how that would feel if another being forced you above your pain tolerance threshold and you were not able to escape. I can't even comprehend that level of suffering. This presentation will then examine the evidence shared by the CCAC and UBC, which shows that the trends in animal research are counter to their policies, claims, and the identity that they portray on their web pages, which commend themselves on their contented cattle and the fact that calves experience emotions when being dehorned. It will illustrate how CCAC and UBC's humane myth allow them to evade the question of the ethical consideration of animals, particularly the inherent right of cows and their calves not to be considered as property, separated from their young at birth, or have their appendages burned off with hot irons or caustic paste. According to the Canadian Council on Animal Care, they are a not-for-profit organization created in 1968 to oversee the ethical use and care of animals in science, research, teaching, and testing throughout Canada. The CCAC is an institution that is governed by 24 member organizations. You can see here the kinds of organizations that the CCAC holds and that govern it. So we have animal agriculture and harvesting-based, research-based, human health-based, animal sciences, and then animal welfare-based. You will note there is some discrepancy between the CCAC's claim that its purpose is to oversee the ethical use and care of animals and the low number of organizations that govern the CCAC who are concerned with their actual welfare. Indeed, if you break them up into categories, only 8% of the governing members of the CCAC deal specifically with animal welfare or ethical issues surrounding the use of non-human animals. Even more disturbing is the fact that the main financial contributors to these organizations are the governing members themselves and have a vested interest in continuing research across Canada. So these are the Canadian Institute on Health Research and the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. At any rate, the CCAC's website states proudly that the 3 R's are at the heart of their policies. For reference, the 3 R's stand for replace, avoid, or replace the use of animals wherever possible. Reduce, employ strategies that will result in fewer animals being used and which are consistent with sound experimental design. Refine, modify husbandry or experimental procedures to minimize pain and distress. The implication is that both the amount of experiments done across Canada, as well as the percentage of the worst experiments across Canada that cause the most pain, would decrease if the true aim of the CCAC was to reduce, replace, and refine. This reduction, refinement, and replacement would ostensibly occur across all 5 of the CCAC's categories of invasiveness, which I'll show here again. If the CCAC were to take the 3 R's to heart, the implications would be that 1, the number of experiments would decline, again, and the 2, the percentages of category E, procedures which cause severe pain near, at, or above the claim tolerance threshold of unanesthetized conscious animals, and D, experiments which cause moderate to severe distress or discomfort would also decline. However, as Laura Janara has emphasized, while this 3R language is compelling, it belies the increasing numbers of non-human animals actually subjected to Canadian university practices and the persistence of category E inflictions. She points to how the statistics indicate that there has been a sustained upward trend in the number of non-human animals used in facilities across Canada. This data illustrates that there has been a sustained upward trend in the number of animals used across all categories of invasiveness since 1999, where each category is highlighted with a different color. Taking a look at the percentage of animals used by CCAC institutions in categories D and E, the most invasive experiments, the data also shows that the percentage of experiments in categories D and E, the most invasive categories of animal use, have no significant downward trend. These statistics show that there has been no moves to significantly decrease the number of animals used in experiments or the percentage of animals used in the most harmful of experiments, as their policies state. Janara argues that this disjuncture between the 3R policy and the number of experiments carried out on non-humans is part of the CCAC language game. The discourse of ethical principles, including appeals to human interest, necessity, and benefits to some, costs to others, and community values. She insists that this discursively conjures a phantom democratic public as an authorizing body. If regulation helps to support animal experimentation, as Elizabeth Ormandy found in her study of public attitudes on the use of animals in science, and if regulation is simply a front to hide the fact that they are actually not regulating or enforcing the policies they uphold, then this language game becomes particularly incipient, as it is involved in exploiting the public's willingness to believe in nationally regulated organizations for its own profit. The most potentially harmful space that this language game plays out is on the CCAC website. This is problematic because, in keeping with the actual construction of the website, it is meant to immediately respond to and address those who are concerned with animal welfare and temper their understandings of CCAC operations. The rotating banner includes 5 messages, 2 of which legitimate the use of animals for scientific purposes by highlighting their animal welfare and ethical basis. The first message in the banner appears alongside a picture of a mouse cupped in the hand of a researcher. The description reads, "Enhancing ethics and animal welfare in science. The CCAC provides nationally and internationally recognized standards and verifies their effective implementation in Canadian institutions." The second picture is of a clean petri dish with no animals and states, "Promoting alternatives to the use of animals in science, the 3R's tenet, replacement, reduction, and refinement, guides Canadian scientists on the ethical use of animals in science." These photos and descriptions participate in the same language game Janara emphasizes in her criticism of the CCAC, but more importantly conceals the truth about animal research within Canada, as it gives the impression of both transparency as well as the impression that they are finding ethical alternatives and decreasing the number of animals in the most harmful categories, neither of which the organization appears to be addressing, as per the clear increase in the number of animals tested on, as well as the lack of sustained decrease in the percentage of animals used for categories D and E. The University of British Columbia is an institution under the CCAC that must therefore constrain to the 3R policy, at the heart of all CCAC policies and guidelines. However, like the Canada-wide reports from the CCAC, UBC's numbers also show that there has been no sustained downward trend in total experiments over the past 4 years. This graph shows the total number of experiments, animal experimented on at UBC per year. It shows over 4 years, simply because there's no data available before 2010. And it shows there's no sustained decrease. This lack of sustained downward trend for the total number of animals tested on at UBC over the 4-year period shows a failure to comply with the 3R's tenet. UBC's failure to observe the refinement, reduction, and replacement policies that are also clear to the continued lack of sustained downward trend for the percentage of animals used in categories D and E. So at the top there is category D, at the bottom here is category E. In keeping with the CCAC language game, which has now fully established itself into a matrix of carrying photos of animals, community involvement, and claims of necessity, UBC has also developed an online language game to meet its possible detractors. This shows how the language game adopted by the CCAC is a game anyone can play, and indeed works as a multiplayer stratagem. This is particularly true given the fact that UBC's animal research page now offers a rotating banner as well, with 2 out of 6 banners serving as advertising for UBC's animal welfare program. The UBC Animal Welfare Program attempts to reform industries that use animals in farming and food production, an attempt that many would see as an improvement on the factory farm system. However, UBC uses the Animal Welfare Program's work to play the language game and emphasize how it is an institution that in which animal research advances animal health, rather than simply the interests of dairy producers, and is only a handful of investigators worldwide focused on the welfare of dairy cows and calves. So you can see their language game here, contented cattle, and UBC animal welfare researchers contributing to our understanding of the impacts of feeding, lameness, and so on. Such appeals include this headline as well: "Dehorning Daisy, better make it painless," alongside of a picture of a calf sitting in a field. The subtext reads, "A UBC researcher finds that calves experience emotion, like depression and anxiety." Not only does this study emphasize how they are trying to do things for the animal's sake, but it also paves over other research that has already been done by multiple parties that shows changes to behavior and emotions in calves under distress from over 10 years ago. This also disregards the lived experience of anyone who has spent any time whatsoever with calves and who can attest to the fact that they experience emotion without taking them away from their mothers or dehorning them without anesthetic. This is a far cry from the real-life contented cattle that I can see at the sanctuary. Similar to the way the CCAC regime uses its language to participate in misnaming, normalizing, and erasure, as Janara asserts, the language on UBC's animal research webpage legitimates the removal of horns from 17 calves with a hot iron, withholding painkiller in order to conduct the experiment just to see if it would affect the calf negatively, while claiming that this process results in contented cattle, thereby erasing the subjective experience of the calf who is being dehorned. By framing this experience in a positive light, UBC in general not only legitimizes the suffering of these cows who went through this experiment, but also conceals the more routine experiments of UBC's animal research. Not only does it legitimize cruelty towards calves, it legitimizes the drinking of dairy and the cruelty calves experience as a result of dairy production, such as the cruelty that Mercy for Animals uncovered just last year in Chilliwack in 2014 in facilities that supply to Dairyland. The cows were whipped, beaten with canes, and dragged, not uncommon to farming practices across Canada. Indeed, although this sustainable program may be important to ensuring calves within dairy farms can have a better quality of life than they currently suffer through at dairy farms, how is it that the university and the professors and graduate students that work at the institution and pay lip service to sustainability can continue to support research that is funding a system of animal agriculture that accounts for 51% of greenhouse gas emissions, is responsible to 65% of all emissions of nitrous oxide per year, the fact that over 900 liters of water are required to produce 1 liter of milk, and the fact that animal agriculture is the leading cause of species extinctions, ocean dead zones, water pollution, and habitat destruction. Given the unsustainability of this system and the torture that befalls non-humans as a result of it, how can it be that the best interests of the community, the environment, or the animals tortured supports this kind of research? This might be a language game to UBC and the CCAC, but for the non-humans and the pieces of non-humans in the animal testing facilities here on this campus, I write these words on, and that I speak on at this moment, this is nowhere near a game. Thank you.